Should we do a psychological war against Trump? One neuroscientist says we have to. So let's talk to him. It's Bobby Azarian. He's got a PhD in cognitive neuroscience. He's a Psychology Today blogger. His Substack and YouTube channel are called Road to Omega. We've talked to him about his books on other topics before. Bobby, welcome back.
Hey, Jing. Thanks for having me back.
No problem.
It's always fun.
It is, whether we're talking about the cosmos, the universe, or we're talking about politics. So
it's all connected.
It is in a lot of ways, as you write about. So tell me about this article where you wrote, a neuroscientist warns the war with Trump has just begun and it's deeply psychological. So what do you mean by that?
Yeah, well, it's a catchy article for a raw story. I think it's kind of offering up some red meat for people, but it's about a lot more than just that. But it starts off just saying that, you know, we can expect Trump to not go away. I mean, he's out of a lot of people's sight. You know, he's not on Twitter for the moment. He's not on you don't see him on like CNN and MSNBC as much as you did before. So we tend to think that the problem's not there. But in the background, he's acquiring more power and kind of aligning the Republican Party with Trump loyalists. And we have to pay attention to that because he may run again. And it's possible that he could win. And if he fills, you know, Congress with loyalists, then he can get away with something like he was trying to do last time when he was trying to overturn the results of the election. Luckily, Mike Pence didn't go along with his plan, but had he, and had they influenced the Electoral College, that could have changed the course of US history. So we need to be vigilant and we need to be thinking about what's the best strategy to make sure that Trump doesn't get back into office.
So Bobby, agreed on all those things. So he's obviously running again, and I think he still has an excellent chance of winning, unfortunately, and we should not be complacent at all. And I further agree that the Democratic strategies used against him so far have not worked. They keep emphasizing his strengths. They don't realize it, but they keep saying he's a bad man, and he's too combative with mainstream media and mainstream Democrats and Republicans. But what they don't realize is the country hates mainstream media and Democrats and Republicans. So, and they don't mind that he's combative. They like that he's combative. They're helping his populist image, even though we know that it's faux populism. He doesn't mean any of it, and he did all the corruption and even worse than the regular politicians. But so since we know all that, I want to skip to the part where you come up with a better plan. Okay, so what's a psychological way of fighting Trump that could work?
So I think that we have to think about what's going on in terms of psychology. And I also think that we have to put something new forward. And I think you can form something like a political platform based on principles from science. And I'm not saying that science has the answers to everything. I'm saying that it provides principles and methods for basically how to optimize social systems based on our understanding of other complex adaptive systems. So complexity science and evolutionary theory sees all of these shared features between organisms and social systems. And that's because you as a complex organism, you're actually a community of agents. You're not a single thing. You're this community of semi-autonomous agents that collectively make this functional whole. Now, the same could be said for society. So society is a system of agents that's also trying to maintain its organization and to be resilient in the face of chaos. So yeah, there are principles from system science that we can use to think about something like a new political platform for potentially a third party or a new progressive party. In the article, I talk about the Forward Party, which is something that Andrew Yang has kind of been the face of. And it might sound kind of counterintuitive if I'm saying we have to beat Trump, what's the best strategy to talk about a third party? But because the nation is so polarized, And because the sides have become so extreme, I think it creates the perfect opportunity for something new to emerge. And yeah, I think the two-party system's broken, and this may be the time to try to give something new a shot.
So, Bobby, if you say, hey, let's learn and test out our theories, like the scientific method, which you do say in the article, I totally agree with that, 100%. In fact, that's what we try to do at Rebellion Pack. We try to learn from each race that we run, and we test out theories. Did it make sense? Did it not? And if you're wedded to your way of thinking, and only your way of thinking, you'll never learn, and you won't learn enough to be able to win. So that part also makes sense. But when you talk about a third party, well, that gets into very complicated waters, right? So Andrew Yang, I think, is a good person. I don't agree with everything that he says, but I think that he's genuine and honest. But the Forward Party has a couple of issues. One of them is that it's filled with Republicans. And in my experience, even the mainstream Republicans and the establishment Republicans and the never-Trumpers, they only really care about power. And so if it's going to get Republicans a backdoor into power, they're thrilled to take it. But my guess is if the Forward Party went in a progressive direction, every Republican in the Forward Party would bail instantly.
Yeah, so the Forward Party, as it stands today, might not be the right party, but the fact that it has emerged and actually has some political weight makes me think others can do the same. Also, it's a young party, so maybe the party can kind of get hijacked by a group that has better, more forward-thinking, progressive ideas, and kind of piggyback on that infrastructure, almost like a virus would piggyback on an organism and make it its own. So really, the problem is, I mean, what are we going to do otherwise? We saw in the last election, and when I say this, I want to preface it by with the fact that I don't think that Bernie Sanders' ideology is the best for America. I don't think socialism, even democratic socialism, is necessarily the answer. But what we saw the Democrats do was when Bernie was winning, Pete Buttigieg, who was second, dropped out and put his support behind Joe Biden. And then suddenly Biden went from like fourth or fifth place to first. And, months later, Pete was offered a cabinet position in return. So when you're seeing the other side play dirty and lie like Trump was doing, and then you see your side use some of the same tactics, even if someone can make that argument that it was for the greater good, but when you see your side cheating just a little bit, it almost just makes you want to quit the game. And I think we're at that point. Not only, is politics just filled with corruption because basically the name of the game is rich people fund your campaign and then you're in debt to those people. Not only is that a problem, just the level of political polarization that we're at right now is making the left define themselves as the complete antithesis of the right. And so if the right is like talking about, stronger stances on immigration, the left will be for open borders. If the right says everything's a conspiracy, the left will say there are no conspiracies at all. If the right says we want unregulated capitalism, the left will say we need to go towards communism. So I think that it's the time for something new. How we do that, how we make that something that gains momentum and actually stands a chance is a whole nother thing. But I think if there were a time in history that such a thing could be possible, it's right now. Like the conditions are perfect for it. So we have to try, and maybe we try. And if it turns out that, the candidate isn't anywhere close to the popularity of Joe Biden, and it looks like that it could pull away just enough support from Biden that it would allow Trump to win. In that case, that you would just do what basically I just explained that, Pete and Joe did. You would just throw the support behind the popular anti-Trump candidate and go with that. But that doesn't mean that we can't try to go for something new and radical in the meantime. And just one more comment on the forward party. Centrism won't always take us forward. It won't always lead to progress. Sometimes ideas that are in between the extremes are going to be superior, a lot of times actually, but sometimes they might come from the right, sometimes they might come from the left, and sometimes they might be something new that's not even on the map. So that's what if it's called the forward party, it has to be truly progressive. Progressive doesn't mean extreme, it means coming up with new good ideas. And I think these ideas, we can pull it from, for example, the system science and evolutionary theory principles that I've mentioned. You can look at crypto economics. I know there's a lot of like anger against like crypto right now, and there should, be a lot of suspicion around characters in that space. But overall, it just provides a new technology that can allow new kinds of economies and self-organizing systems. So I think it's the time to try to forge out a new path, and that's really what I'm trying to do on my Substack, Road to Omega, with the help of some others, is see if we can create something like a platform for a third party that's truly progressive, but not on either of these extremes, that puts forward ideas that both sides can say, okay, that's reasonable.
Yeah. So Bobby, I think that you're onto the right idea, but it's a little off, if I might say so myself, and I might, and I do.
This works through throwing ideas out there, experiments, and then criticism plays the role of natural selection. So please tell me what I can change.
So first of all, there are almost no extremists on the Democratic Party, unless you're considering extreme love of corporate donors, which does suck, and it sucks royally. But CNN would call that moderate, and New York Times would call that moderate and centrist, right? So the Democrats' extremists are in this quote unquote center, according to Washington, right? So the Republican Party has plenty of those as well. But like the communists you're talking about, they're like, they don't exist in the Democratic Party at all, all.
That's
they exist
totally
online,
totally true.
And they're like a tiny minority of leftists online, right, among the young.
Exactly.
But it's not. It's false equivalency. Well, you're not looking for.
That's what Fox puts a spotlight on those. So that's what the right wing puts a spotlight on, and then it defines the left wing for people on the right. So I'm not saying that the Democratic establishment is sort of those people. I'm saying that basically it's been framed in these terms, and either, like, for example, just saying that you're for free speech is like a no-no today. Like, if you say that, it sounds like a dog whistle for like white nationalism or something. So we've come to a point where the sides, just like the mindsets, the ideology, the worldviews, are so extreme that there's this giant group of people in the middle that is like, I don't want to see it go farther in that direction. And the concern is that if the right keeps going farther to the right, then naturally what's going to happen is the left is going to go farther and farther to the left and kind of try to appeal to that small minority.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think that what's happened in the last 40 years is the right has gone way to the right, and the Democratic Party has followed them to the right. So right now, I was a liberal Republican in the 80s and 90s. The people that I supported today couldn't get elected in a Democratic primary because they'd be considered too far left. So no, the Democratic Party generally is very right wing, right? So
you're talking about the party, like the people in power, not the actual sentiment of a large group of people on the left.
Yeah,
and even if that's the case, which I completely agree with, it's still not good. It's that's worse. That's almost worse. I mean, it's just status quo. Same thing. It's like establishment left is like, establishment right. It's like Rubio
and
Bush,
Hillary Clinton
they're kind of all the same thing.
Yeah, Rubio and Hillary.
So that's bad too.
Yeah, Rubio and Hillary Clinton.
That's just more reason for something new.
Yeah, Bobby, let me just get to it. So first of all, Rubio and Hillary Clinton are the same person. Mainstream media and mainstream Democrats will cry and say, oh, that's outrageous. And then I'll show you that on economic issues, they agree about 90%, right? And so Mitt Romney and Barack Obama was basically a false election. They both believed in the same exact healthcare plan. It was in fact called Romney Care before it was called Obamacare. It was written by a right-wing think tank called Heritage Foundation. They agreed on 90% of economic issues because they were both corporate politicians. No, the answer for a third party or a faction within a party, an outside group, is not to go right or left or middle. It's to go non-corrupt. That you got to break the matrix completely, right? Because everything is based on corruption. And so when mainstream Democrats and mainstream media says, "Can you believe how corrupt Trump is?" everybody laughs their ass off. You guys invented corruption in this country, and you're pretending that you're concerned about corruption. You have zero credibility. $17 billion in political ads went to mainstream media in the midterm, in a goddamn midterm in 2022. That's why mainstream media never talks about the number one issue in America, that all of our politicians are bribed. They're legally bribed by all their corporate donors. That's why the Forward Party, if you ask me, isn't going to work either, because they have not banned corporate PAC money. If you don't have a real ban on corporate PAC money, and not the fake ones that Kamala Harris and Cory Booker, et cetera, did, then you're going to go back into the same slop. It's going to be totally and utterly useless. The only thing that could actually break the matrix and win is anything that is uncorrupted. And it's not me just, hey, look, I formed Just Democrats. They're not allowed to take corporate PAC money. I made that rule. We all agreed to it, and that makes a giant difference. But it doesn't have to be on the left. Matt Gaetz, as much as I hate him, doesn't take any corporate PAC money, he doesn't take any PAC money. So you might dislike his opinions, but they're at least honest opinions, okay? So, but it has to be someone who's not taking this big dollar donor money. Otherwise, no one's gonna trust them.
Yeah, I agree with all that. And the Forward Party, the idea, it has good branding, and it is trying to be unifying in these times, but it might not be the right thing. So my question is to you, can there be another third party, and can someone be a serious contender without that super PAC money? Is that possible?
Yeah, 100%.
Or is that just an idealistic dream?
No, look, what I think is the answer is obvious. I formed it. It's Just Democrats. It's within a party, but doesn't take corporate money, doesn't take big dollar PAC money, and so they could win in primaries, and they have won in primaries when nobody thought they could win in primaries. But they must stick to economic populism. That's what the country loves. Even Republicans love economic populism, and they must have strength and courage that so far they've shown a little bit, but not enough of, where they're willing to take on their own party leadership. You can't do a revolution while having tea with the leaders of either party. So you got to throw away the goddamn crumpets and go to war. And when we say war, we mean not physical, because that's the thing we're trying to avoid, but political, rhetorical, and maybe even psychological. But you must attack, and you must do it from the moral high ground of not being corrupt.
That sounds like a great plan. Let me ask you, within that plan and in that group that you envision and that you're working to make happen, is there room for the principles that I mentioned, like radical ideas for how to structure and optimize systems based on complexity science, system science, and cybernetics, evolutionary theory, all the things that I mentioned? Would a political group be up for trying something that progressive?
Well, I wanted Just Democrats to have that philosophy, if not in those exact words. But I've split with the group now, and I still support Just Democrats, but I'm not with them. That's why I formed Rebellion PAC, because I believe in those particular scientific methods that you're describing. And if we don't do that, why? That means we're less open to winning. And so yes, if you could take Rebellion PAC and Justice Democrats and smush them together and focus on economic populism, you would have what Fetterman did. Fetterman won independence by 20 points, even though he had a stroke and he could barely speak during the debate, okay? So you could win those independents, but you don't win them by being more corporate, what Washington would call more centrist or more moderate. Those are fake words meant to deceive you into voting for corporate politicians, and you can't do it by going to extreme right. And right now there isn't even an extreme left other than online, okay? So you've got to do what actual Americans want. But right now, other than half of Justice Democrats, we don't have anything like that. So
well, I think the fact that we're having this conversation is a step in the right direction, and maybe Rebellion PAC will be in my next article along with the Forward Party as options. So I'm excited about it. But I do also know that there's a group of people online. It's not just academia, but science-minded people, rational people, people who value reason, would be very attracted to a political party that's based on principles from science, and that basically operates with the understanding that we don't know what the best system is going to be for the future. We don't know if it's going to be like a little bit of a tweak on capitalism or a tweak on socialism or some hybrid. We have to test it. We have to test these things out, and we have to pay attention to what ideas work and what don't, and we need to self-correct. And if you're worried about, testing radical ideas that affect people's lives, we can do simulations. We can model these processes, and if we start doing that and that becomes a thing, then these models will get more sophisticated and will start to match the complexity of the real world. And I think that approach, this kind of hypothesis testing approach, and removing our errors, so self-correcting, having society be a self-correcting system, is the way to go. And when we look back, it's going to look like we were in the dark ages for a long time because we didn't provide, we didn't take these evolutionary principles seriously.
All right, everybody, we'll have the link to Bobby's article in the description box below if you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook. We'll also put a link in there for Rebellion PAC and Just Democrats, so you can check that out. And Bobby, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, and follow me on Twitter, follow my Road to Omega Substack, and hope to be back and have another discussion with this about you in the future.
All right, excellent. Thank you.